Mr. G.K. Goh, Chairman of Temasek Foundation and board members of Temasek Foundation, Mr. Heng Chang Ni, Deputy Chairman of ITE and the Board of Directors of ITE, Mr. Bruce Poh, Director and CEO of ITE, Polytechnic Principals, Dr. Benjamin Tan and Ms. Sabrina Loy, Chair and Co-Chair persons of this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning everybody. Welcome to the Singapore TVET Conference 2015. I thank ITE, I thank the Polytechnics for organizing another look-to-be successful conference, and to thank the Temasek Foundation for supporting and being the key sponsor. Today I'll speak on two topics briefly. First, the importance of vocational trades to society and economy, one. Two, how we can harness the dreams and aspirations of our people to build a stronger Singapore. So let me start with the first topic. How are vocations relevant to society and economy? The simple answer is in almost every way. A vocation has sometimes been seen as a job and even a destination, sometimes even of last resort and economic rather than a personal choice. But as a collective, artisans, craftsmen, tradesmen have always been part of a larger social order. It is also an evolving order depending on economics, societal values, and politics of the time. The concept of 士农工商 is an ancient Chinese concept. It is arguable that whether it was meant to be a social hierarchy, but it did turn out to be so. The Chinese society did give 士, which is the court official, the highest regard, and this is the chess piece next to the king, if you play Chinese chess. Nong, which is the farmer, came next, followed by the gong, which is the vocational tradesman, and finally the shang. Unfortunately, that's the businessman, which is last, which for some reason in ancient Chinese culture, it is treated with some suspicion. But I must say, in the great consolation to businessmen in the year 2000, with the advancement and the opening up of the Chinese economy, entrepreneurs and businessmen cemented their place in the Chinese system through the three representatives theory. Social hierarchies through occupations are even more entrenched in the Indian civilization, with roots in the Vedic Indian society. Vaishyas, which comprises merchants, artisans, tradesmen, and farmers, they are placed below Brahmins, the priests, above Kshatriyas, which are warriors and public servants, and above Sudras, the laborers. Europe has a very different social setup compared to China and India. Feudalism in the Middle Ages made it necessary for tradesmen, craftsmen to get together, form guilds, and to advance their own interests vis-a-vis the feudal lords. They are the first trade unions. Through the guilds, they charted career progression pathways from apprentices to journeymen to masters. They stipulated and enforced standards, imparted skills and knowledge to future generations, and enriched those knowledge along the way. Today, the tradition continues in many European countries, and we have many of the experts here today. And in Germany, in Switzerland, and other European countries, the vocational pathway is parallel and not subordinate to the academic pathway. The US has its own historical biases, which it is still grappling with. But when it comes to acquiring skills and advancement in a vocational trade, it has taken a very pragmatic approach. It is a system with a whole collection of certificate courses for various trades. Indeed, in the US, after you get your degree, after you get your master's, the next progression is often a certificate program in a very specific area or a very particular task. Years ago, when Singapore was building the integrated resorts, and we were promoting MICE, which is Meetings, Incentives, Conferences, and Events in Singapore, the Workforce Development Agency tried to bring in a US certificate course in event management. I think it wasn't that popular because it's certificate, But it does teach you the task of organizing a MICE event. Unlike China, India, or Europe, Singapore, as a young, multicultural country, we do not have the deep-seated historical biases or baggages. We can combine the rigor of European vocational training system and the pragmatic nature of the US employment market to develop our own system, one in which skills are not subordinate to academic knowledge, one in which both are needed for our society and economy to excel. Given the economic realities today, the distinction between vocational training and academic tracks is becoming less and less meaningful. Traditional craftsmen need knowledge to distinguish their work, and academics need hands-on skill in order to excel. And at the highest level, it is not possible or no longer meaningful to distinguish the two. Let me cite two examples to prove this point. First, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, we know him as a great entrepreneur and great creator. But as a young child, he admired his father, whom he described as being able to build everything. And he followed his father around, mending fences, repairing cars. He loved electronics as a child, did a summer job with Hewlett-Packard to make frequency counters on the assembly line, and designed circuit boards for video games. His foundation of vocational skills, which was in fact laid under his father's influence rather than through formal education, and desire to make things, overlaid with his knowledge of technology, markets, and consumers, enabled him to create the first computer with a graphical user interface, a GUI. And as you know, GUI predated the Macintosh and later the iPod, which in turn provided the technological foundation for him and his company to create the iPhone and the iPad. That's the story of Steve Jobs. It started with his vocational skills. A similarly inspiring story is that of J.K. Rowling, the creator of the world of Harry Potter. As a child, she wrote fantasy stories and read them to her sister. Her true vocation is a writer, but Harry Potter has become a brand in itself, and Rowling's legacy has extended far beyond the book series, covering movies, merchandise, theme parks. To me, most importantly, her work has cultivated the reading interests of millions of children around the world. And she would not be able to change the world and do all this without first being a writer. I believe to excel and accomplish something innovative and extraordinary, one must have the deep skill sets hardwired into your anatomy. No? So your movements and responses become visceral, it becomes instinctive. It is like Roger Federer taking a tennis swing. I have a golf example here, but I met a few Swiss friends, so I changed to Roger Federer. and the movement of that tennis swing coordinate the wrist, the elbow, the hip, the core muscles, everything. Such a complex coordination of movements, all fluidly combined into one natural swing. And that takes years and years, millions of hours of practice. Or you see the fluid beauty of Lionel Messi on the football pitch, that took millions of hours of practice. But from the deep foundation laid by this time and effort, you can then reconfigure, rearrange your competencies, invent new ones, and venture into the unknown. So for all of us who watch Chinese Kung Fu movies, when you reach that stage, that is when you retreat into the mountains, never to go into a duel again because you don't want to hurt somebody. So in Chinese, again, when you practice something hard enough, you acquire 心得 in Chinese. 心得 is something you acquire through the heart, executed through the soul. And this is how high you can go in the vocation. Let me now switch to the second topic, which is how we can harness the aspirations and passions of our people in vocational skills to build a stronger Singapore. In a recent speech at an OECD conference, I spoke about the important tension present in higher education, balancing the collective good and the aspirations of individuals. The two are not inherently contradictory. Allowing individuals to pursue their passions and interests can lead to, and perhaps is the only way, to realize the collective good. According to a 2013 Gallup survey, if people work in jobs that make good use of their knowledge and skills, they are more likely to be engaged. Engaged employees are enthusiastic about and dedicate themselves to their work. They contribute to their organizations in a positive manner by being the ones who are most likely to drive innovation and growth, which in turn is for the collective good. There are small cities and towns in the US, in Europe, where one occupation, whether it is to build ships, to build cars, produce a particular foodstuff, dominates the whole local economy. In Singapore, we have built a diversified economy with good jobs across many fields. Amongst all the sectors, trades, and occupations, there is a very good chance that a young person can find something you desire to work in, you are passionate about. When our students progress from one education level to the next, they have important decisions to make about the education pathway and the course of study to undertake. However, sometimes we can decide our pursuits based on how society fits us within a social hierarchy. I even hear about students choosing courses based on what their parents want, or what their friends are choosing, or where their friends are going, or what they think they can realistically get into, even though they are not inherently interested in those subjects. I think there are better ways to choose, and I encourage students to choose wisely, based on more of their heart. Choices should be made based on a good understanding of yourself, your passion, your aptitudes, and also a good understanding of the course and career, and not just based on salaries or the perceived status of the profession. I think we can afford to dial in a greater bias towards personal aspirations in that whole admission system. That is to say, to build a choice architecture that better allows individuals to enter a course of study that can better fulfill personal aspirations and help him or her go as far as possible. Our institutes of higher learning already have existing frameworks in place that adopt a holistic approach towards admission. Approximately 7.5% of our full-time polytechnic students are admitted on the discretionary basis via the DAP, or called the Direct Admissions Exercise, the Direct Polytechnic Admissions, and Joint Polytechnic Special Admission Exercise. Our universities can also admit up to 10% of their intake on a discretionary basis, based on their own independent criteria. So these could include recommendations, interviews to assess the passion, strengths, and competencies of these students over and above the academic achievements. So let me share some examples. The first one, Mr. Lee Yong Hong Justin, is a NITEC student. He built his portfolio of digital animation work during his studies and his national service days. He was admitted into Nanyang Polytechnic's Diploma in Digital Media Design Animation, not on the basis of his grades, but through the submission of his work portfolio during the DAP, the Direct Admission Exercise. Today, he's working with Lucasfilms. Mr. Tengku Muhammad Khalaf bin Tengku Zainal Shah has a diploma in aerospace electronics. Upon graduation from Polytechnic, he worked as a quality assurance technician with the turbine overhaul services before moving on to project management work. The Singapore Institute of Technology, SIT, recognized his work experience in site engineering and quality assurance and admitted him into a Bachelor of Engineering program in Sustainable Infrastructure Engineering, after observing how passionate he is about his work and how much competency he has demonstrated during his work. These two stories illustrate the heart of our education policy. Educators and employers should not be too quick to dismiss individuals' interests and aspirations if they can demonstrate their strengths, passions, and capabilities through means other than their academic qualifications. We will encourage our institutions to place greater emphasis on holistic admissions beyond academic achievements by affirming and recognizing practical knowledge and experience. In so doing, we do not compromise our standards or rigor. Individuals would still need to demonstrate that they have a good chance of completing their selected courses successfully. The same approach should apply to working adults who desire to further deepen their skills back at the education institution. We know mastery when we see it, we taste it, we wear it, use it, or learn from it. We ourselves find meaning in vocation that we have chosen that matches our interests, talents, and personality. The challenge is to develop a system that best matches vocation and aspirations, to create a marketplace for this matching, and to build the infrastructure that allows us to work through to the highest form of our vocations. This will create many paths to success and broaden the definition of success in society, beyond how well a person does academically or how much he or she earns. This will be a cultural shift, but one that requires employers, education institutions, training providers, society to all move in tandem. An openness in the way we view the world and our society through new lenses. It is not a trivial shift, but one that will determine our economic prospects as well as the tenor of the Singapore society. It will not be an easy endeavor, but if we can manage to do it, it will be worthwhile. And with all my colleagues in MOE, in the polytechnics, in ITE, we will take this as our vocation. Thank you very much for your attention.